This is Sue Greenwald here with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with the Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Deanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Today, I know you don't ever know what we're going to talk about, but today is part two of our Puerto Rico, how it's been exploited by the USA. So we're
Okay.
part two. We're going to talk about some specific points and facts and figures. And if there's anything I'm lacking in, please jump in and let me know what I'm missing or what corruption I might have missed there. Okay.
I got it.
All right. So as we talked about last time, Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory in 1898. And basically, the U.S. has granted the Puerto Rican citizenship. They can't vote, though. They have no local government, but they can be drafted into the military. So we've really used Puerto Rico as a resource, really not caring about the people or the land or anything that happens to them. So I want to do a little quick slideshow that shows you the attitudes of the U.S. People and representatives, governmental agencies toward Puerto Rico. All right. So
Hmm.
we had basically a senator from Tennessee, William Bate, I'm sorry, call them savages addicted to head hunting and cannibalism, which is pretty offensive, right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of the attitude of the people 100 years ago toward Puerto Rico. Americans had a colonial attitude toward Puerto Rico, and we basically treat Puerto Rico like Europe treats Africa and India. Basically, we don't care about the people or the land, but we want the resources, we want the free labor, we want whatever they can take and make money from. All right. So that
Hmm.
seems to be our
Correct.
biggest concern and interest in Puerto Rico overall. And authorities back then, when we took over the island, portrayed Puerto Rico as a people incapable of self-rule. And they basically reinforced it as an island that was exotic and foreign and so different than us. They were
Hmm.
depicted as needing US intervention to become a modern civilization, which is kind of what we talked about last time, right? They can't do it on their
You
own.
know,
They need us.
yeah, yeah. It's a way for them to slide into whatever they need,
Yeah,
whatever resource they see fit.
right.
If they deem it, they need to be there to support them. It gives it the people think that they're doing something, high and mighty, like, oh yes, we're saving them, we're helping them
Right.
modernize. And for the most part, they don't need to be modernized. Most of these civilizations that we have come into play, we've actually destroyed.
Right.
And once money comes into play itself, it changes everything.
Yes.
And not in a good way. The structure does not work for them. And it really takes away from their natural resources, their natural education, and the lineage that they pass down.
That's exactly what we've done too. We've destroyed their
Mhm.
culture, we've destroyed their land, their property, and everything. Their economics haven't developed properly. It's quite shocking when you really look deeper into it, you know.
Yes.
So again, they're perceived as being incapable of self-rule. The laws were made by a bunch of, we call them old guys, but guys up here in the USA that probably had never been there. But it seems to me that they had ulterior motives for, wealth and position as far
Mhm.
as taking the resources out of Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
right? So here's a graphic I found. Uncle Sam seems extra stern with its new territories who are shown in the front. And when I was looking at this, notice there's a black guy in the background doing the cleaning, and then there's a Native American by the doorway. And it kind of looks like he's hiding a little bit, but the rest of the students are all, white, Caucasian. And so we're really stern about these new territories, right? So here's a close-up of the four territories we had taken over way back when. Now, Cuba we never occupied, but Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Guam we did. All right, here's a tweet from Trump. which I thought was interesting. So we had Hurricane Maria in 2017. And let's state again, was this a natural occurrence?
No.
Okay. And did they do the hurricane basically to wipe out the people and then to take over the resources of the island?
Yes.
That's what I assumed, and that's why there was such limited response from the government. Okay. They basically lifted the Jones Act for only 10 days. So, the Jones Act, we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail in a minute, but basically, that lifts the tariffs from the shipping companies that have to come over. And also, with the Jones Act, you have to use a US based ship. And so that they took that off for only 10 days so that, Puerto Rico could get its supplies, but it wasn't enough. Okay. So from this tweet, what I'm taking is the attitude from Trump toward the Puerto Ricans was that they were lazy when in fact they had been hit by a hurricane. The entire island was decimated. They had no clean water, no electricity for over a year. The roads were blocked, the power was out, etc. Is that what you're taking away from this quote?
Yeah. The other thing, the thing about it, I guess, is that yes, the way it sounds is very negative. And
Yes.
I think that even in one of his videos, or one of the videos, is him throwing paper towel rolls at
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
saying like clean up yourself. Now, yes, it's very negative and it is condescending, but I think at the time too, it was kind of supposed to be a wake-up call
Yeah.
for us. I mean,
Oh,
we kind of saw it as this negative thing. We talked about it. I mean, I remember hearing all about, I can't believe he threw paper towels at them and told them blah blah blah. And nobody did anything. We talked about it. We talked about, what he did, but some of this, I feel is a wake-up call. It's supposed to bring attention and light to something in a way that doesn't necessarily draw attention to the person that said something.
right.
Basically like tattling without tattling. The problem is that we're not always, or understanding of what is being thrown at us. Um, so I feel like it's kind of like one of those double-edged swords. Like it is a backhanded comment, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I think it was also meant to bring an understanding to, this is how America's treating them. Like you don't like what we're saying, but then you're also supporting this. So you can't really do both.
So you're saying he was being a little bit sarcastic in here
Yes.
and trying to get our attention that there, like, you got 10,000 workers there on the island not doing a fantastic job, really. And it's kind of a farce almost. It's a
Yeah.
slap in the face. All right. I love that you said that.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you. Here's
of
another
course.
quote. And basically, he said that we can't keep, bringing people there forever. All right. So again, we had sluggish response from the government and limited funding for the Puerto Ricans. So like just a
Mhm.
fraction of what the mainland gets when there's a hurricane. And again, we know that this hurricane was purposely created by weather modification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that, but then part of it is if you actually look at most of the resources that you're supposed to send over, they were paying large chunks of money to it, but in reality, most of that doesn't actually see the people in need.
Yes.
Um, and this, I think, is still an ongoing topic of, these resources, because we use them with natural disasters, and no matter what disaster happens, it's still never enough. It takes years
Yeah.
afterwards to pay for it. But when you look at the amount that's been raised, you kind of question where is the money going to.
Exactly.
So for most of these, especially FEMA, if you look at, how much the high ups are making versus what's going to the people, it's very interesting. It's kind of like, I mean, if you look at anything that goes into donations. Look at the lead person who is making all the money. And when we talk about these big corporations, most of the CEOs of these donation-based places are making millions of dollars.
Certainly. And one of the most corrupt agencies is the Red Cross. So
Mhm.
years
Yeah.
ago when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, this is what I heard. I met somebody that was a former federal employee. He went down to help with Katrina, and what he saw is the Red Cross came in, they took their photos, they turned away anything that was non-cash, blankets, water, clothes, whatever. They turned that away. They didn't want that for the people at all. When, of course, the people need everything, right?
Yeah.
And then they left. And he said the devastation was inconceivable, and they left, and we never saw them again. So he basically left his position after that. And that kind of feels like what FEMA has done, like in this case. And of course, we have Hawaii, North Carolina. Every disaster seems like they're there for the photo ops and for the cash. Like there's so much money being sent to that agency to help the people, but the people don't get any of it, and it's really not tracked very well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to show you a little tiny short clip of compilation of some videos that I put together. It won't take more than a second to watch this.
Mick Mulvaney is here right there, and Mick is in charge of a thing called budget. Now, I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. Everybody has said it's amazing the job that we've done in Puerto Rico. We're doing a great job. We have had tremendous reviews. The governor made incredible statements about how well we're doing. I think we've done a really good job. We're doing a really good job. I mean, I think we're really getting really good marks for the work we're doing. I think it's going really well. We've made tremendous strides. I think it's now acknowledged what a great job we've done. In Texas and in Florida, we get an A plus. And I'll tell you what, I think we've done just as good in Puerto Rico. We have done an incredible job. And that's the truth. As far as Puerto Rico is concerned, that's been going, as you know, really well. It's been total devastation.
What's your feel about him throwing the paper towels like that?
Well, it's a really rude move. But like I said before, I think it's a way to really draw and attract attention to something.
Yeah.
Um, Usually, when something is negative, it brings more photo opportunity, it brings more people to talk about it. And he has been known to talk about stuff that most people don't really like. And I know during like that first term he was serving, I mean, who wasn't talking about him and what he is posting? I think that he did these crazy things, although some of us don't like him. I think that some of the stuff he did, even though it was very outlandish and doesn't really make any sense, was a way for him to also bring attention to something. Um, Also, the way he talks, everything is really good. Usually, when somebody says it's really good, and they can't describe it in any other way, it tends to mean that it's really not that good. Um, but I mean, you also have to do the research. I mean, a president that comes out and says, we're doing a horrible job, the people that are working here don't know what they're doing. Um, and then also talking about like the tariffs and stuff. And it's just not usually a good look. So I think it was a way for him to say it in a not so broad way. So I feel like the way he says something isn't always the way it should come off, but there's ways to draw people into okay, what are they really doing? And that's when you have to dig into the research.
Right.
Like I said, the paper towel throwing, um, very rude, disrespectful, and it was really to bring attention to how it was going. Just like when they said it's a floating piece of garbage, it's a way to really bring attention. Yeah, you don't like what they're saying, but at the same time, everybody's backing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So you can't have one and then not the other.
Yeah.
Um, I think that what he said about you've kind of destroyed the
Budget.
what was the economy or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. Yeah.
the funds, it was really a way to say, hey, we wiped out, our farming and you're ruining our money because now you don't have to pay tariffs for 10 days. So that's 10 days of inventory loss. Plus you lose that on the ships itself.
Right.
And then, whatever production was going to be coming from it. So it's
Right.
a really a sly way to say we really depend on what you are producing and the money that you're giving us.
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw that hurricane thing, I was shocked because I was going to throw in scenes of the actual hurricane. So somebody that cares about it can see that the roads are flooded, the houses, like pretty much every single house is decimated, the whole country decimated, and he's throwing paper towels. Now, the good news is that he gives people hope. Like it was kind of an uplifting and fun little thing. He goes and people are excited, but it was very rudely done, I thought.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, so that is like kind of a summarization of the American attitude of Puerto Rico and its people. Shocking.
Yes.
All right. Next thing I want to share with you is a little bit more about the Jones Act. Okay, so we talked about that the other day, and the Jones Act was created, and there's four main shipping companies that benefit from it. So here's a lot of facts and figures. I didn't want to memorize it all, but for anyone that wants to research this, it is very interesting that some of the information is super hard to get. All right. So the Jones Act originated with Senator Wesley Jones, and he was in Washington, but he wanted a monopoly on shipping to Alaska, which is partially why he created the Jones Act. And the Jones Act is a big deal. It requires goods shipped between U.S. ports to be transported on ships that are built, owned, and operated by United States citizens or permanent residents. Okay. So that narrows down all the shipping options, right? But it leads to a substantially higher shipping cost. So they basically pay 500, so Puerto Rico pays $568 million more a year for the extra shipping, which raises the prices by 1.1 billion with a B. Shh, that's a whole bunch of money. And
Yeah.
that is also a way of them controlling the goods that Puerto Rico receives, right? Now, one other thing is they have to have the fuel shipped in as well, gasoline and stuff to power their energy grid. So that all has to be brought in. So again, we talked about how the Jones Act was only lifted for 10 days in 2017 after Hurricane Maria. All
Mhm.
right. And that was not effective because it was too short of a time frame. Now, Senator Wesley Jones, I tried to research him. It was a lot of blah, blah, blah. The one thing that I didn't like that I read about him, besides this bill, is that he tried to create another bill creating the Yakan Nation, which is, American Indians, to give the US 75% of their land to gain irrigation rights. And it almost went through. All right. So there was a lot of supporters of that at the time. Now, again, we're talking 1900, the early 1900s. So there was an attitude that, some races are superior to others. But my question to you is, did he have other motives for creating the Jones Act?
Oh, of course he did.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it. If you can control portation, if you can control what's going in, what's going out, if you can control the shipping, which then he probably owns a lot of ships himself.
Right?
It is a way to have profit, a huge profit that you don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it still happens in our government where they've passed these laws and then they get the back-ended money from it.
right.
So, it's something that still goes by today. But it was definitely created to get a large portion of money, not only from the ships themselves, but the portation.
Right. So I tried to research any connection between him and the shipping companies. Now, a lot of the shipping companies we're going to talk about next are located or they do a lot of business out in the Pacific Northwest where he was operating from.
Mhm.
I was unable to find a direct connection. Now, I mean, it's got to be there somewhere. I couldn't find it in the amount of time I spent. All right. So it's got to be there for anyone that wants a deeper dive.
Yeah.
All right. Now, these are the four main shipping companies that are basically benefiting from the Puerto Rican involvement in the Jones Act. Sea Star Line. Okay. Literally no information out there that I could find. All I know is that it's a subsidiary of a Danish company. All right, so that leads me to the question. There's a couple here that are subsidiaries of foreign countries. How does that work if they have to be US owned and operated? Doesn't seem fair right off the get-go, right?
Yeah.
And there is a rule that the ship has to be 75% owned in the US and crewed by US citizens or, full-time uh, people that live there. So I'm not sure if there's a loophole here, but it seems suspicious there's nothing there. Okay.
That's probably why there's nothing there.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Now, these four that we're talking about also were accused of price fixing. And remember, they are receiving millions, probably billions per year for this particular one island. Okay, Tote Maritime, part of the Tote Group owned by Saltchuk. Saltchuk's revenue is 400, or I'm sorry, 4.85 billion. Located in Seattle, so there's that connection to the Pacific Northwest there, but they're based now in Jacksonville, which is a big shipping port. Okay. Crowley Maritime, again, now in Jacksonville. They own a whole bunch of other related kinds of companies, although some are a little ambiguous. Fuel, logistics, transportation, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then the one that I think seems the most suspicious is APL, American Presidential Line. So again, this particular company was started in the 1800s, and in 1938, the government actually took control of this company. Like, how can that be? How can they be interfering in the business of a private organization? I wonder. So basically, APL was acquired by Singapore, and then they're a subsidiary of a French company. Okay, so how is that possible that they're qualified for the Jones Act if they're owned by France? Doesn't make
They're
sense.
not.
So they're not. They're not
No.
qualified.
No, so pretty much off of all these companies, they are not qualified except for two.
Yeah.
And the only reason they are getting what they want is by payoffs.
Payoffs.
So people do not know what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, unless you do research and hard research into these companies,
Yeah.
you're not going to know that they're owned by France and
Right.
that, they are not acquiring the Jones Act. So in that case, the Jones Act should be acquitted.
Right. So basically, for anyone that would like a deeper dive, I've given you the four companies and you can go and try to research. I only had a limited amount of days that I could devote to this, and I was unable to find information on some of that, which I thought was
Yeah.
highly suspect, right?
Yeah.
Like
They
there's
want
no,
it that way.
yeah, yeah. So that's the Jones Act, and that needs to be repealed because that's costing Puerto Rico. It's raising their prices.
Mhm.
It's causing the people great suffering, and we don't seem to care about their economy there that much. So I
Well,
want to talk.
economy, we don't really care about the act itself if we're already going against it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we're just creating basically a place like we talked about before, slave labor, right? Free
Yep.
labor. And that's exactly what's happening. All right. Now, we've created a place that's literally, they are US citizens. It is the poorest place in the US. So I just want to share some facts and figures about that as well. All right. So Puerto Rico is the poorest place in the US. All right. Now, what happened is it used to be a Spanish territory and they developed coffee and sugar as their crops. Well, US takes it over in 1898. This guy, Charles H. Allen, was appointed as governor for
Mhm.
17 months, okay, in 1900. He totally set it up for the US companies and his friends and his government official friends to take over much of the wealth of the people. So basically, he denied Puerto Ricans loans and he subsidized American-owned farms, okay? And then the American-owned farms were appraised low, so they paid like almost no taxes, where the Puerto Rican farms, their expenses just skyrocketed. So basically, the Puerto Rican farmers eventually lost their land and their farms,
Mhm.
and they were forced to sell their land, and sugar companies bought it up for very little money. And then the
Yep.
Puerto Rican farmers were forced to work for minimal wages. And then when Charles H. Allen was done, he went back to the US and eventually got involved in the sugar industry. How suspect is that? And he was working with what eventually became Domino Sugar, which everyone knows about. All right.
Yeah.
So his whole strategy was to make it so Puerto Ricans could not benefit economically, and he killed the coffee industry as well, but they were unable to compete. And so they lost the land, and the Americans basically took over the land. So then in 96, Bill Clinton took away all Puerto Rican tax exemptions. And this caused massive layoffs. Companies had to close, taxes were increased. And then in 84, it was declared illegal to declare bankruptcy. So then investors came in and they started buying up the bonds from Puerto Rico. And they were going to make sure that they got paid, of course. And they raised sales taxes to, get even more money out of Puerto Rico. In 2014, a law was enacted where they can't borrow money. And so there was a thing called vulture funds where the investors will basically buy Puerto Rican assets for pennies on the dollar. All right. So
Mhm.
everything's being sold off. And there was a guy called Paul Singer, nicknamed the Doomsday Investor, who worked with other struggling companies. And then he basically owned so much land from these companies because of these vulture funds.
Yep.
So again, this was systematically done.
Yes.
So there's no financial recourse for the Puerto Ricans at all. The U.S. creates a board so to ensure that the Puerto Rican debts are paid. Okay, worried about their money, right? Called La Junta, and this group imposed higher taxes, created tolls, cut funding for schools, medical assistance. All the good things are cut, wages are cut, days off cut. All the bad things are increased so that again
Yeah.
all that money is being funneled over to the US, which is why it's more expensive. And
Of
the
course.
sad part is they make like about a third of what the US workers make. Shocking. Okay, then the next step is public assets are privatized. So basically, energy companies are taken over, but Puerto Rico had to pay for that, which I don't even understand how that happens, right? So they had to pay millions to an energy company to take over their energy company. And then again, they increased the taxes to the people. So energy is way more expensive than what we pay here in the US, and it's way more unreliable. Okay.
Yeah.
And all
Does that
goods,
make sense?
yeah, all goods cost more, so that
Mhm.
creates less competition, right? So, basically they lost the coffee industry because they couldn't be competitive price wise.
Yeah.
And so now their biggest industry is sugar. Now, some of the issues that I read, which were shocking to me, is that we, the Americans, were worried about Puerto Ricans because of the hurricanes, which of course we're causing.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, competition, which again, we're causing higher rates, and a lack of arable land, which is growing land, which there's tons of growing land there in Puerto Rico as long as they don't decimate it with a hurricane, right?
Yeah.
So it's amazing how shocked we are about their lifestyle, right? I wanted to talk about the sugar industry. We call it modern, but that doesn't look modern to me. Most of the farmland for sugar cane is owned by the Fanjul family, and they came to Florida in 1959. They had started out in Cuba with many sugar plantations, and when the revolution hit, they came to Florida because they knew that the embargoes against Cuba would affect their business. They now own American Sugar Refinery, which is one of the largest, if not the largest. Their annual revenues are 1.5 billion with assets of 1 billion per year. Huge, okay? Billion with a B. One interesting fact that I found is that they have the largest biomass power plant in the US. And biomass means it burns organic fuel. The brands that everyone's familiar with is Domino, and Florida Crystals and C&H. And again, we're talking about the largest sugar refinery in the world. The Fanjul sugar empire is known for three things: the sugar industry, sustainable energy because of the largest biomass power plant in the US, and political contributions, which I thought was interesting. I did try to research that without much luck, but I found that there were some donations to Gavin Newsom's reelection campaign. That's all I could find. But isn't that interesting how that's listed as one of their major things to be known for? Corporate issues they're known for: environmental impact of cane sugar farming on the Everglades ecosystem, and labor dispute. So when we talk about labor dispute, we're really talking about in the US. So consider what they're doing to the Puerto Ricans who make less than the US workers, have less days off, and horrible working conditions, like archaic working conditions. So sugar is the biggest industry. Because of that, the Puerto Ricans have to bring in their food from elsewhere, probably most likely America, right? And of course, they're paying much more than the Americans are for their food. Now, in 1976, McDonald's came to the island. And at the time, maybe it was a little bit more pure, but we know that McDonald's food is not really healthy and good for anyone. It's not something you can really sustain yourself with. At this moment, there are 108 McDonald's on the island. And when I did the research, I found 80 fast food restaurants in San Juan only. Currently, the crops in Puerto Rico are coffee, sugarcane, and then GMO corn. So the rest of the stuff they need to import. So their health is declining. 15% of the population are leaving the island. There's no really jobs, there's no income opportunities, there's not great education. The population is aging. Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about was child trafficking. So when I did the research on this, I was shocked to find out in 2023 there was only one new case of child trafficking brought up with the Department of Justice. One. That sounds very suspicious to me. Normally in the Caribbean islands, there's a high incidence of trafficking because of the hurricanes and the tropical storms. There's a lot of disaster. A lot of people go missing and can't be tracked. And that's usually when many nefarious people come to the islands and whisk those children or people away. So that's a very unknown number. Last topic I wanted to talk about today is what can we do? All right, first, educate yourself, learn about the facts and figures, understand why the prices are so high in Puerto Rico. Two, let us ask to have the Jones Act repealed. Please write your Congress people and your senators and everyone, ask them to take that Jones Act away. And three, whether you're Puerto Rican or not, ask for sovereignty for Puerto Rico. They need to be self-governed. They need to run their own economy. They need to keep their profits in their country to develop a strong country with healthy people. Thanks so much for watching.